The DCEU is going through something of a major restructuring as of 2019. Warner Bros. Series, once led by the likes of Jeff Johns and Zack Snyder, is heading in a distinctly different direction, divesting from the darker visuals of the likes of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, while also introducing a brand new slate for 2020 onwards. There are heroes both obscure and otherwise who are yet to head to the DCEU, but now it's time to focus on those who haven't even been rumoured to appear on film in the future. We already know the likes of Green Lantern, Batgirl and Supergirl are coming for definite, but there are other key Justice Leaguers who haven't even made so much as a peep. Things could finally be coming together for DC on film, but they could get even better. So, I'm Ewan, this is What Culture, and here are 10 essential DC heroes not yet used in the DCEU. Number 10, Captain Atom. Captain Atom's legacy might be best embodied by Watchmen analog Dr. Manhattan, and even though John Oppenheimer beats his predecessor in every department, man walks around with his willy out for a reason after all, there's no reason why the Captain shouldn't form a part of DC cinematic plans going forward. Initially acquired by DC in the wake of the collapse of Charlton Comics, Captain Atom has managed to become a vital member of the Justice League in the team's various incarnations. The character even made a splash on Justice League Unlimited, which played on the fact that the Captain, although a superhero through and through, has various ties to the military. It's a conflict of loyalty that DC could easily look to exploit on the big screen, and though their on-screen continuity won't be short of superpowered individuals by the time Shazam enters the fray, Atom could add some much-needed sci-fi credentials to a roster packed with fantasy elements. Number 9, Mr. Terrific. Terrific, real name Michael Holt, was first introduced in 1997 and quickly managed to carve out a reputation as one of the smartest figures in the world. He can learn and perfect pretty much anything he sets his mind to, is an expert combatant with the use of his T-spheres, which also enable him to fly, by the way, a superb medic and tactician, and, to top it all off, he can also remain invisible to all electronic detection. Whether it's the JLA or the JSA, Mr. Terrific has long been considered an irreplaceable member of DC's super teams. Having him appear on the big screen then should be something of a no-brainer. Number 8, Booster Gold. Booster Gold isn't really a superhero, to be honest, at least not at first. The man known as Michael John Carter actually hails from the future, and grew up on tales of the heroes from the 20th and 21st centuries. In an attempt to gain money and fame, Gold travels back in time to make a name for himself, but after realizing the value of true heroism, learns the error of his ways. Carter might not be the most famous DC hero going, but he's one who's played an increasingly important role in the comics since his introduction. He was a staple of the JLI, formed a budding partnership with Ted Kord, the second Blue Beetle, and went on to win the respect of all his fellow Leaguers as he demonstrated his commitment to putting others before himself. It's a winning premise for a film, especially given the time travel aspect and the fact that Carter starts out as an ego-driven individual. He's a bit of a cartoon, and seeing him come to terms with the real world would work wonders for DC on film, even if audiences aren't familiar with the character. Number 7, Zatanna. Marvel might have Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, and Blade, but DC have their rivals beat when it comes to all things supernatural. The publisher has the likes of Dr. Fate, Etrigan, Deadman, and the Spectre to call upon, but one of their most beloved characters from that corner of the DCU is Zatanna Zatara, daughter to the original Zatara, who was a member of the Justice Society during their formative years. Zatanna is everything the current DCEU needs, and would fit right into a Birds of Prey follow-up, a Batman film, or even another Justice League reboot. She's charming, charismatic, and one of the most talented magicians in the DC universe, with the hero able to conjure spells by saying words backwards. Deadline reported that a Zatanna film is in development back in November, but nothing has emerged since that initial announcement. Number 6, Static. One of the principal architects of the DC universe for those who grew up in the late 90s and early noughties was the late and great Dwayne McDuffie. The creator co-founded Milestone, an imprint that strove to tell diverse stories when the rest of the comics industry was otherwise complacent, and masterminded the peak years of DC animation on shows like Justice League, Teen Titans, and Static Shock. McDuffie created Static for Milestone before the character moved to the DC universe, and he remains one of the most viable creations the writer ever conjured. Virgil Hawkins is a young black teen who gets caught up in the Big Bang in Dakota City. Emerging from the explosion, Virgil discovers that he's able to emit and control electricity, and so decides to become the superhero known as Static, all while balancing his life as a high schooler. Static has been in and out of the DC universe in the years since his introduction, but he's managed to leave an indelible mark during that time. McDuffie's Static Shock cartoon was a key pillar of DC animation during the early 2000s, and if WB had any common sense, Static would have been in their plans a long time ago. Number 5. John Constantine. John Constantine is an occult scouser with a penchant for demon hunting. He's a magician, a con man, and a chain smoker, and one who's slowly but surely risen through DC's ranks to become one of their more popular characters since the start of the decade. At the moment, Welsh actor Matt Ryan portrays Constantine on the CW's Legends of Tomorrow, and he does a fine job of it too in spite of the show's silly nature. Ryan was also restrained by NBC showrunner David Goyer back when the original Constantine TV show was airing. It's only recently that the Hellblazer has been integrated into the DCEU proper, but he'd effortlessly slip into WB's big screen plans if they're looking to spice up their cinematic slate. R-rated comic book movies are the in thing right now, and though the term gets bandied about with properties that have no business with that rating at all, Hellblazer needs that kind of freedom to work in live action. Number 4. Blue Beetle. To begin with, Blue Beetle wasn't actually a DC character. The publisher acquired the hero from Charlton the same year they got Captain Atom and the Question, but he's arguably become the most successful acquisition of the lot. Whether it's Ted Kord or Jaime Reyes, Blue Beetle possesses so much cinematic potential. It is the latter figure, however, that deserves special attention, with Jaime's time with the Scarab begetting a sci-fi focus that again, save for Justice League, is sorely lacking in the DCEU currently. Reyes is first introduced to the Scarab when he's just a teen. The alien device fuses to his body and grants Jaime a slew of new powers, being able to morph his exoskeleton into a variety of different weapons and other such tools. Number 3. Hawkgirl. Hawkman may have been the first Hawk-themed character in DC's library, neglecting to mention the Black Hawks, but for the last 20 or so years, Hawkgirl has led the way. The most bizarre thing about Hawkman and Hawkgirl is that their backstory has changed more times than DC themselves have even had reboots. Sometimes they hail from Egyptian ancestors, other times they hail from the alien planet of Thanagar. It is the latter interpretation that most DC fans will likely be familiar with though, as it's the one that inspired the versions seen in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. It's doubtful that Hawkgirl would have become a staple of the League once again had her profile not increased thanks to that show, but regardless, WB would do well to learn from that depiction of the character, Maria Canals-Barrera's performance specifically, and take her onto the silver screen. Number 2. Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter is probably the best Justice Leaguer ever, and yet filmmakers have been reticent to sanction a live-action adaptation of the character. How have they managed to do that though? I mean, look at him. The man just wants to live in peace and enable his Oreo addiction. There is so much potential with J'onn J'onzz, and it mainly stems from the fact that WB could make whatever film they wanted with the character. He's a green Martian who winds up on Earth, and with the ability to shapeshift, decides to become a detective for the GCPD. He was actually a key character in Detective Comics for a while, and with the hero later going on to become a pivotal member of the Justice League, there's obvious potential there to make each film in a given trilogy feel almost like a different genre every time. Side note, the Manhunter is also one of the publisher's most powerful heroes, and with him already being a fan favorite, again, courtesy of Carl Lumbly's performance in Justice League, DC would have a surefire success on their hands in no time at all. And number 1, Green Arrow. Of all the DC characters to have gotten the short end of the stick in recent years, Oliver Queen might just be the biggest. When he first started out, Green Arrow was nothing but a Batman ripoff. As the years went on, however, he developed an identity of his own, becoming a firebrand hero who wore his left-wing politics on his sleeve. While touring the States with Green Lantern, he strove to hold a mirror to Nixon's America, and when he was with the League, he was always there to hold their feet to the fire and make sure they were accountable. Put simply, Oliver Queen is the heart and soul of the DC universe. He exemplifies what heroism is all about, and though the CW's Arrow never bothered to communicate that in the 7 years it's aired for, that doesn't mean Warner Bros. Can't. Frequent partner Black Canary is already set to appear in Birds of Prey, played by Journey Smollett-Bell. If DC wants to use that character further down the line, then they should think about introducing Ollie as soon as possible. With the beard. Can't forget about that beard.